Do you want to see the operating system we use to run the team, align everyone, and ensure that we're heading towards our goals? I'm going to pull back the curtain on the exact operating system we use to run a $100 million startup. Hey, I'm Arjun, founder and CEO of doola.com, a business in a box based in New York City that's raised over $13 million of venture capital. And today, I am actually going to show you the exact operating system we use at Doola to align people, to set goals, and execute week over week. It is inspired by the book Traction by Gino Wickman, which we have adopted to call the Doola operating system. Let me first take you back in time to when I realized we needed an operating system. One of my favorite quotes of all time, it's in this book, Atomic Habits by James Clear, is, "You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems." And when we started the company, I remember the time when the entire company would just get into a Zoom or a Google Meet call every morning. There was one Slack channel where everyone could communicate, and we didn't really need any process or system because that was the process or system. We would get in the call, we would message each other, and that was that. Everything was fast, everything was exciting, and things just seemed to work. But at a certain point, things just started to break. And I actually think, now that I've thought about it, it happens at different levels of Dunbar's number. So Dunbar's number is these groupings of how many people you can keep in sort of relationships with. And the numbers go from 5 to 15 to 50 to 150. And I think that around 15 to 50 people is when things started to break in terms of communication, because you go from having 15 people in a daily meeting, which is what we did, where everyone would literally go around and share updates, to realizing that takes too long to do and not everyone needs to be there. And then it hit me. Our problem wasn't ambition. We were working hard. It was systems. It was a bit silly that, for example, I had a system for exercise at the gym to hit my goals, but we didn't have systems within the company to hit our same goals too. Wishing and wanting for something to happen is a hope, versus having systems which predictably mean you will head towards your goals. This also reminds me of a quote from George Perlis, who is the defensive coordinator of the Steelers, who ended up winning the Super Bowl multiple times in the 1970s. His quote is, "We made every decision like we were going to the Super Bowl." And in fact, they not only went to the Super Bowl, but they won. That is the same thing that I want to apply to Doola, where every single thing we do, we make decisions and we act like we're going to our Super Bowl, like we're going to win our Super Bowl. And for us, the Super Bowl is obviously reaching millions of founders and helping them launch or level up their business. So let's start by looking at the 6 pillars of the Doola operating system. You actually need all parts of the wheel for the operating system to work. Step 1 is vision. You need a vision. Having a clear vision is actually, I think, the most important thing, because if your vision is clear in terms of knowing where you want to go and why, it makes decisions beforehand so much easier. And it makes decisions after the fact so much easier. If in your personal life you have a goal, I want to run a marathon, that means you're going to have to do training for certain levels of weeks, which probably means you're going to have to watch what you eat and maybe not stay up till 4 a.m. every night because you need to wake up early to train before work. So having clarity on your vision or your goal actually helps you make the micro decisions week in, week out, or day in, day out. Similar for the business. Us knowing our vision, knowing who we want to serve, how big of a company we want to be, it helps us understand right now decisions we make around setting the foundation for scale, how ambitious our goals should be, and what our goals should even be in the first place. So to set our vision, we answer foundational questions like, what is our 10-year plan? What is our 3-year plan? What is the 1-year plan? Who is our core customer? All of these things, and look, it's not just about asking, it's about writing them down on paper, help us ensure we're heading in the right direction. It's the ultimate North Star. We put this into a document called the Vision Traction Organizer. Every single person in the company can access it. It's in writing. There are no secrets. This means less guesswork, more alignment. We are all heading in the same direction. Next up is people. Now, people are so important because at the end of the day, if you have the right people, you can build the right product, and then you can generate the right profits. It goes in that order. You can't do it without people. That's what a company is. There's a cheesy saying, but I think it's true: to go fast, go alone; to go far, go together. Very cheesy, but I think it's so true, and that's the power of a company, where you really are taking multiple people, and 1 + 1 = 3. It doesn't equal 2. I know it's cheesy, but seriously, people are the foundation of any company. You can have the best vision in the world, but if you don't have the right people to execute, it does not matter. So again, the people pillar, I would summarize: do you have the right people in the right seats? Are they value aligned, zero compromises there, and do they get the role? Do they want the role? And do they have the capacity to do the role as well? That's the second pillar of the operating system. The third pillar of the operating system is data. There was a line I loved from this book, High Output Management, which talks about how, imagine if every company ran like a sports team. Or actually, let me ask you this. Imagine you went to a sports game. I'm a Celtics fan. And imagine you go to the game and you don't know the score. It would suck. I think it would really suck. No one would go to sports. The whole point of a sports game is there's a score. It's competition. And that's why the players play, and it's why people come to watch. The sad thing is most companies run like that. No one knows the score. They don't know what their ultimate metric is, and then individuals don't know their metrics too. So we completely flipped this on its head. We went through an exercise to redefine at the company level down to every single person in the company. What is their number? It's an exercise we're going through. And here's the thing. What's so powerful about this exercise is it actually forces you to ask, what are the actual inputs, the leading indicators, the activities you do that contribute to business outcomes, which then drive lagging outcomes. So I'll give you an example. The ultimate lagging outcome we have is revenue, customers coming and paying us. But to get that revenue, there's things we do, like send outbound emails, or do consultation calls with customers, or create content. Those are things top of funnel that then put Doola out there, which then allow people to come to our website and move through our funnel. So when it comes to data, not only have we defined our key company metrics, but we go through an exercise where every single person in the company has indicators. They have metrics. We have then department scorecards. There's a company scorecard. All of this comes together so that every person has a number. They know if they're winning and they know how they're doing their role. Now, the other thing I'll say here is this is going to be a never-ending process. Right now, given where the company is, we can define key metrics. And as new roles are created, there will be new metrics too. And maybe a metric actually we think is helpful, but it's actually not helpful in a few months. So you have to adapt here. It's a never-ending iterative process, but I would challenge you, and this is something which candidly was silly that we didn't do before. If you don't have numbers, it's like going to a sports game and not knowing the score. So think about that for your business. Can you make it more like a sports game? If you can do that, I think it's not only more fun, but everyone knows exactly how they're doing. Pillar number 4 of the Doola operating system is issues. Now, if you think about it, if you don't like solving problems, you should not work at a startup or join a startup. There's always problems, but where there's a problem, there's opportunity. And where there's opportunity, there's a way to have impact. And I think it's fun to solve hard problems. So at Doola, the issues pillar is we have issues that live on a couple lists. We first have our vision traction organizer issues list, which are issues that live beyond 90 days. So the way we think about it is, hey, in these next 90 days, what are the biggest things that we think we should solve? And then we set our quarterly goals. But anything beyond that, these could be pie-in-the-sky product ideas, or maybe there's a rebrand. If we don't want to solve it in these 90 days, we put it on this issues list. So it's parked there, and we know in future quarterly planning, we can go and grab it. Then we have department issues. There might be issues of, hey, how do we change the website tagline so it's more clear for customers? Or customers are clicking on this and there's a bug. How do we make it more streamlined? Or how do we increase the number of customers that are signing up through Google SSO login? Those are all things that can be solved at the department level. And then there's issues at the leadership level too. How do we better roll out alignment within the company? What is our hiring philosophy? What is the way we want to hire people globally? And we use this method called IDS, which is identify, discuss, and solve. That happens at the leadership level, that happens at the department level, and then ultimately individuals can do this too. So the goal here is that we put issues out in the open, and then the name of the game here is prioritizing. Based on our goals, that's why the vision is so important, it's why it's the first pillar. What are the issues we need to solve to actually hit our goals, or is it an issue which we're going to park and come back to in the future? Pillar number 5 is process. This is really, I think, the key saying, and you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So a process is a system. And what we do here is that a lot of times you can create a process which is maybe way too complex. There's 100 different steps, and that's very fragile because if one part of the process changes, the entire process is moot. So we flip to having these processes which are higher level, things that are actually more adaptable. They don't change as much over time, and they're easy to follow and followed by all. So we started by going department by department and having each lead actually define the key process in the company. And then you put a name next to that with a backup. And then slowly over time, you work your way to documenting every process in the company. But by starting with the biggest process, you focus on what matters versus getting lost in the minutiae or the details. So we have a process that explains how the operating system works. We have a process that explains how we put out content. We have a process that explains how we move customers to our bookkeeping. All of these things are ultimately processes which make it easier for new Dooleans to onboard and for the internal team to be aligned on how we deliver value. And finally, the 6th pillar is traction. At the end of the day, ideas are cheap. Execution is where the money is made and where impact happens. There's a saying which maybe is a bit morbid, but I think it's true. The best ideas on earth are 6 feet under the ground. They're people who had ideas but couldn't take action. So traction is where it all comes together. You have the 10-year vision. You have your 3-year plan, foreseeing where you'll be in 3 years. You've set your annual goals, but then what are you doing in the next 90 days? And how do you ensure week in, week out, you're executing towards those goals? So what we do is we set quarterly rocks. We call them rocks because take a jar. If you have a jar with rocks, sand, and pebbles, if you actually put the sand in first, then the pebbles, the rocks jut out, they don't fit. But instead, if you flip the order, the same amount of material, and you put the rocks in first, you'll notice the pebbles actually trickle through and the sand does as well. Everything fits. That's the same way for a company, where technically the easiest thing you could do is probably come in and just respond to emails all day. That's sand. And instead of focusing on the biggest rock, which could be finding and closing the new biggest partner, it doesn't fit because you spend all day responding to emails. The end of the day comes, you're tired and you realize, oh, I never sent an outbound email. So we define rocks, the 3 to 7 priorities max, company-wide and then by department, that we're focusing on for the next 90 days. And then we know if we prioritize the rocks, the sand and the pebbles will fit. And then we have meetings weekly where we mark on our objectives and key results sheet, are we on track or off track towards the rocks? And if something's off track, we can then flag as a team and figure out how can we solve it in the identify, discuss, and solve portion of the meeting. Everything ties together and it ensures that we also have scorecards so we can see metrics. Are we heading towards our goals? Are they on track or off track? And we have the scoreboard to know if we're winning. So those are the 6 pillars of the operating system, and I'm screen sharing right here. This is exactly what it looks like in Notion, which is what we use as our internal hub. So you can see at the very top, I have the quote from James Clear about systems and goals. I have the quote from George Perellis as well about making decisions like you're going to your Super Bowl. And then on the page, you can see here in the Start Here section, I actually walk through what is the OS, what is the shared glossary or the keywords, and then how does the process work when you tie things together. Then in the reference section, we have lots of subdocs that go through each of these concepts so that every single person in the company is fully aligned. Let me give you a little teaser here. So this first document, the Doola operating system, walks through exactly what the OS is. Now I want to come to this image here, which I think is one of the most powerful. This explains how the cascade happens from vision down to traction. Now, to make that even clearer, we have a visual representation right here which shows what happens on different cadences. So the goal is here to really spell out exactly what happens at what time. Now, this can be a lot of information, there's a lot of words. So the next thing we did is we actually defined a glossary, which defines every single word. We want the company to speak the same language. Again, I really like this concept of how can you turn work into sports? The same way a sports team has signals, the same way the catcher signals to a pitcher, or the football team will mention a play, why can't we have that same thing within a company? So we've defined every single one of these key terms in our glossary. So you can see here, every single phrase or term is clearly documented so the entire company speaks the same language. We're calling the same plays. And last but not least, I'll show you an example core process. This is so that someone understands how everything ties together in practice. Step 1, we set our annual goals. Step 2, we do quarterly planning. Step 3, we have weekly L10 meetings. That's how we have 10 out of 10 meetings. Step 4, we review scorecards. Step 5, every week we mark if our rocks are on track or off track. Step 6, every quarter we review the last quarter's rocks and we set new ones. And step 7, every single quarter we analyze, do we have the right people in the right seats? The last thing I'll say is this is a never-ending work in progress. This is adapted from the EOS system from Traction, but we put our own spin onto certain things. That's why we call it the Doola operating system. If you are watching this and you're realizing, holy crap, I have ambition, I have dreams, but the execution isn't happening, the Doola operating system or the EOS system could be the thing you are looking for. Again, it helps you have clarity. And the way I think about it is it helps every single person in the company paddle in the right direction. So by having a very clear operating system, you can ensure every person is paddling in the right direction towards your goal so you can win your Super Bowl. That's a wrap. I hope you found value in this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comment down below. Even if you'd actually like a template for this, comment down below and I'm happy to create one and share it. We also have tons of additional free resources. I write a newsletter called the 2-Minute Business Hack with actual tactical tips on how to launch and level up your business. We have ebooks on how to start and scale your business from anywhere in the world. You can find all of those links down below. Also, if you yourself are scaling a business and need help with your back office, that's why doola.com exists. So you can focus on what you do best while we handle the LLC, the bookkeeping, the taxes, and more. You can schedule a free demo online at doola.com. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video on the Doola operating system valuable, and I'll see you in the next video.